Okay, guys, today we're going to go over chapter 1. It all starts with the menu. So let's look at first some of the objectives for this particular chapter. Tell why menus are important, explain who should be on the menu planning team, and describe basic menu planning tactics. Describe basic procedures useful to design a menu. Provide information useful in establishing menu selling prices. And explain procedures to analyze the menu sales mix and implement menu improvements. So first thing, let's talk about planning the menu. Why is it important to plan the menu? Well, in short, proper preparation prevents poor performance. So we want to make sure that we're going to plan it properly. And one of those things is so we attract customers. Now, we want to make sure we attract the customers that we want. That is called a target market. This is a group of people with similar characteristics and similar demands of the marketplace. These are your customers. These are the ones that you want in the door. The ones that can afford it, the ones that it will appeal to, whatever the demographic is, whatever the situation is. That is your target market. That doesn't mean you're limited just to that target market, but that's what you're looking for. The financial impact of the menu, it will affect the overall impact of it. We want to make sure that we'll get into the details of profit. We'll get into the details of generating the price to value ratio of it as well. How the menu impacts the daily operations, whether it is a piece of equipment that needs to be utilized properly or it's the proper staffing levels. All of these factors are going to play an issue in the daily operations. We want to make sure that we have the proper chilling and refrigeration to keep out of the temperature danger zone. We want to make sure we have the proper fire suppression system. If you're using a grill that has gas as opposed to a grill that has natural wood, you're going to have a different fire suppression system set up for that. Let's start looking at the menu planning team. Who it is that is the menu planning team? Well, first we have the owner or the manager. They're going to be the ones that are going to help set the financial goals. The kitchen manager, these are the people that will ensure that consistency is produced, the quality and quantity standards are there. The creativity is also in charge of this individual. The dining room manager, these are the first people that are going to touch the customer. They're going to be the ones that are going to interact with the customer the most. So you want to definitely get them involved in this process. The purchasing agent, they need to know whether or not they can source the material, which can be a big factor as well. If you've got foie gras on the menu and you can't get foie gras because you're in California and it was illegal for a time, then that's a problem. And then, of course, the accountant. The accountant is the one that is setting the serving costs. That's the cost to produce the items of serving the menu item prepared according to the standardized recipe menu. We often call that the food cost of the item. And then, of course, they're also setting the selling price. Now, these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups of people, but sometimes these can be the same people. These can be the owner manager and the dining room manager and the accountant and the purchasing agent could all be one individual. The kitchen manager and the purchasing agent can be one individual. So it's just duties and assignments within that, really. Menu planning steps. This is going to be a little bit lengthy, but bear with me on this. So number 1, remember menu planning priorities. What is your priorities? Now, we break this down into external and internal priorities. Your external priorities are first your target market, who you're marketing to. Next, your competition. Look around you. If you're opening up a restaurant in a new location, you need to know who your competition is, not just your direct competition. If you're opening up a restaurant that does Mexican cuisine, you need to know the other Mexican restaurants, but also your indirect competition, Chili's and Applebee's, and even to the lesser extent, your fast food competition as well in that market. Consumer trends. Now, it's really important to distinguish between a trend and a fad. A trend is a gradual change in customers' food preferences, such as healthy eating, that's likely to continue for a significant amount of time. versus a fad, which is a short period of time. And it's likely not to continue. I'm really hoping TikTok is a fad. Um, brand, keep your brand in mind. It relates to how establishments' products are and services are different from your competitors. When you think of baby back, baby back, baby back, give me my baby back, baby. Immediately, you're going to think of Chili's, right? That's part of their brand image. You don't really want to go too far outside of that. If your brand image is a steakhouse, then why are you selling fish and chips? Now, your internal things that are impacted are things like your menu mix. And we're going to talk more about menu engineering in a bit, but menu mix is the frequency in which menu items are ordered compared to other menu items. In other words, how popular are they? Profitability, we want to talk about contribution margin. We'll get into the idea of contribution margin in a minute. This is the difference between an item's revenue or selling price and its food cost. So for instance, if it costs us 30 cents to make and we get $1 for it, then our contribution margin is 70 cents. The kitchen, do they have the capacity to even execute the menu? A big complicated menu requires a big complicated kitchen structure. The menu at Cheesecake Factory, while it may look huge, it's actually only 5 or 6 items that are tweaked into different ways, and they can get by with a smaller kitchen. The ingredients themselves. Can you even get the ingredients? And if you can get the ingredients, can you get it in a quantity enough? If you don't have enough menu items on the menu to utilize all that ingredients, let's say for instance you've got one foie gras dish on the menu and you may sell 3 a night, that foie gras is going to go bad in the refrigerator before you can even get a chance to sell it. Equipment, do you have the proper equipment to be able to execute the menu again? Does the equipment need to be connected? Does it need to be serviced? How is it operated? All these factors have to take into consideration. Production staff and service staff. Right now, you know that we're in a staffing shortage. I'm hoping that won't last forever, but right now we are. So you have to consider, do you have the staff to be able to execute that menu as well? Step 2, consider the establishment's concept. We talked a little bit about the brand. Now, the concept is sort of the umbrella in which the brand resides underneath. It's the overarching idea of what the concept is. Is it fine dining? Is it family dining? Is it fast food or quick service, as we call fast food? Is it family dining? All these things can be under the concept of it. And we want to take that into consideration. Also, quality factors like flavor and texture, form, shape, nutritional content, visual and aromatic appeal, and temperature. All these have to be considered under concept as well. Step 3, determine the number of menu classifications. These are things such as entrees or main courses, house specialities, appetizers or starters, soups, salads. You may have sandwiches and wraps, vegetables and accompaniments or side dishes, desserts and beverages. All of these are categories. You want to consider whether or not you have too many categories, don't have enough categories. Do you have things properly categorized within the menu itself? So there's a lot to be able to consider for that. Step 4, consider potential menu items. You want to start by narrowing the process. How do we narrow the process? How do we come up with potential menu items? It's not as complicated as you might think. We use menu items that we've used in the past. We even borrow, you can't see it, but I've got air quotes, borrow menu items from our competitors. Now, we don't outright borrow them like that. We're going to tweak them and do things. Menu evaluation information about the profitability and popularity. That's going to be called menu engineering. We're going to get into that. We want to make sure that standardized recipes are considered. Standardized recipe is a set of instructions to produce and serve the food or beverage item that will help ensure that quality and quantity standards are consistently met. Product inventory and ingredient availability reports are important as well. Do we have we're going to do an inventory report, constant inventory. We need to know how much we have on hand. We need to know if we can get it. If it's a sometime around May the 5th and you have a lime dish on your menu, good luck getting limes sometimes because Cinco de Mayo takes all the limes into consideration. And then input from managers, employees, and most importantly, customers. These are the ones that are eating your food. These are the ones that are going to tell you what they want. Step 5, select specific menu items. Whether it's, keep in mind the classifications of entree, appetizer, soup, salads, and such. We want to make sure that we have a nice variety within those categories. We want to make sure that if it's an entree that we have beef, chicken, pork, blah, blah, blah options. If it's vegetarian, we want to make sure that we have plenty of options within that. You might even consider having a couple of vegetarian items if you're not a vegetarian item operation, because having to come up with a vegetable item or a vegetarian item on the fly when it's Friday night and you are 17 tickets deep into it is not a fun thing to do. Temperature, customers typically expect some sort of items to be served hot. So temperature is very important for food safety concerns as well. And we have to be able to know, can we maintain that temperature? Nutrition, a lot of times we want to keep a variety of food. Everything doesn't have to be deep fried. I know it's the South and that's a sacrilege, but we don't have to deep fry everything. If you got a stick of butter, that doesn't mean you got to deep fry it. Texture, we want a lot of different textures. One of the worst things I remember my niece growing up, she would only eat things that had the texture of things like mashed potatoes and cooked chicken that was kind of mushy, vegetables that were mushy. I'm like, ugh, I gotta have some crunch, some crispiness in there. I gotta have some chewiness in there. All these different textures. Also shapes and sizes, how it visually appeals to you. Keep in mind the garnish. The garnish should be an edible decoration. It should make sense in the dish. If it doesn't make sense and it's not edible, it's called a non-functional garnish, and we just get rid of them. Flavor relates to taste. So the common tastes are sweet, sour, salty, and bitter. We have another one in there called umami, which roughly translates into savory. But those are just common tastes. That's all you can get from that. If you close off your sinuses and you poke your nose like this and you try and talk and you try and eat something and you can't taste anything, or you're sick and you can't taste anything, then you're not going to experience the full effect of flavor. You really have to be able to embrace your olfactory senses, your sense of smell, in order to engage flavors. So try this as an experiment. Take a strawberry, pinch your nose closed, and then chew on the strawberry. And what you're going to get is sweetness. Now, unclasp your nose and breathe in deep while the strawberry is being chewed on, and it's immediate sensation like that. You're going to say strawberry. You can do this blindfolded. Do this with multiple different things, and it's a really cool experiment to do. Color plays a big aspect of our eye appeal. We often say we eat with our eyes first, unless you're in a Mexican restaurant, and then you eat with your ears because of fajitas. I'm just saying. Now I kind of want fajitas for dinner. But colors like brightly colored vegetables, but even so much that, a nicely colored fried chicken. If you ever gotten fried chicken that's too dark and it just doesn't look right, you taste it and it's got a bitterness to it, but it may not have a bitterness, but your eyes are telling you it has a bitterness to it. That's a very real thing. The composition and balance of the food. Sometimes managers have to have no control over how food items relate to each other. For example, a buffet customer may select food items they want, and it might not, necessarily mash with each other. So we want to make sure that if we're doing a composed plate, the composition and balance is there. And then, of course, we have to consider possible selling price, how much we're going to pay for it. Are the customers willing to pay that? And then we're going to look at the test results. One of the things I never do is I never take a menu item and put it on a menu until I've tested it for at least several months in the restaurant. Um, and oftentimes I'll run it as a special to be able to do that. We get into some of the other steps. Step 6, this is going to be developing a menu draft. Step 7, revise the menu as needed. A menu is a living document, and you want to consider it that way. It doesn't mean that once you create a menu, it stays that way forever. Menu design. So let's talk about some of the background information. There's several common types of menus. An a la carte menu. A la carte menus have different prices for each item. A good example of that is go to a steakhouse and you order your steak, then you order a potato and a vegetable and a salad, and you're going to have a different price for each one of those things, and you add them all together, and that's your bill. Don't forget the wine. Please don't forget the wine. A table d'hôte menu. These menus often refer to an entire meal as a set price. Some examples of this could be a banquet, a buffet menus. Some establishments also set price for an entire meal with a specific number of courses. You can also look at this as a prefix menu. Prefix is another example of a table d'hôte menu. A cyclical menu or a cycle menu. These are menus that are planned for a specific period of time and then repeated. For example, a cafeteria may offer a 28-day menu that is repeated every 4 weeks. Or you may run your specials in a 14-day cycle, whatever it might be. Cyclical menus are a really good way of giving variety to a menu without having to constantly every day be creative and create a new menu. You've got a cycle that you can use. Now, these are great operational menus for institutions such as schools, hospitals, prisons, all of that sort of thing. Du jour menu. Du jour means of the day, and that means that the menu items will change daily. A lot of establishments offer daily specials in addition to the regular menu items. Menu procedures, designing. We want to think about how we design a menu. The menu has to be attractive and be a good first impression. Your menu is your first marketing tool that you have. The customers come in, they see a menu that's kind of haphazard and thrown together and it's difficult to look at. No one's really going to want that. No one's going to want to look through that menu, waste their time. They want to be able to identify something pretty quickly. The menu should not be cluttered. It should generally be approximately half of the space on the menu should be left blank. We call that negative space. All words must be spelled correctly. All words must be spelled correctly. Use a spell check, but don't rely on the spell check. We all know that autocorrect has messed up more relationships than anything out there. I'm not going to give examples, but I'm sure you all have your own examples. But I use the rule of 3. I always look at it myself, make corrections, give it to somebody else, let them make corrections, and then give it to one other person, let them make corrections. 99% of the time, that's going to solve all your issues. Now, it's a good idea to run that through another spell check or run it through maybe a third or fourth or fifth person. Sometimes that has to happen. And even then, you might still make mistakes. But hey, you at least tried. Menu descriptions, not selling prices, should be the focus of the attention. You want to make sure that your menu description is well written. We'll talk more about that in a minute. The menu size should not be able to interfere with the table, the handling of the table. I'm sure you've all seen these oversized menus and these 2-top or 4-top tables that you got these oversized menus sitting on. They don't fit on the table. You have to stand them up into a teepee. It's just really irritating. Menus should be durable and easy to clean unless they're single use. So let's talk about prime real estate. And I'm not talking about, the Kardashians' home out there that you want to get into and everybody wants to get into the Kardashians' home. That could be taken differently. Let's talk about prime real estate and the location of menu items. So we want to put our menu items where they're going to make the most use. So we call this particular site a prime real estate. Now, it's a very scientific way of discovering this. They actually take a camera and they track your eye movements as they do this. They've done this study for several years over thousands and thousands of customers with menus. And they've determined where the best locations are on every kind of menu there is. You'll see a diagram of it. You can see it on page 15, but it'll be later on this slide as well. So we want to put our most popular and most profitable item in the prime real estate, right? Not always. No. We sometimes we want to use that space to feature an item that is not necessarily our biggest mover, but is really profitable for us. So we want to use that space to be able to pump up the sales, as it were. Um, the menu item descriptions, it's really super important to uh, write your description with purpose. And what I mean by that is there's a couple of different things that we think about. Now, I'm going to disagree with the textbook a little bit here. The textbook says write plainly. Avoid technical culinary terms and foreign words unless they are menu names and menu featured items from different countries or cuisines. It uses the example of consider writing dumplings instead of quenelles, or finely shredded vegetables and herbs instead of chiffonade. First off, if you write finely shredded vegetables and herbs on your menu, you are pigeonholing yourself into a specific type of menu. Know your audience, understand their level of expertise with a word, and sometimes it's okay to talk over their heads because this is a great opportunity to train your serving staff to train your customers. What I mean by that is the term haricot vert. Haricot vert means little French green bean. It's a very tender green bean. They're snap right. They've got a little, they're nice shape. They're really excellent. They've got a sweetness to them. But if I said a little tender green bean on a menu, I'm going to look like an idiot. So I say haricot vert. So I teach my staff to say haricot vert, and then immediately right after that, a little French green bean. And then they'll do that a couple of times. Now, eventually that customer is going to come back in and go, you know what, I like the haricot vert with that. And all of a sudden, boom, you got them. Now you've raised their level of discourse. Define items carefully and correctly. For example, a New England clam chowder is not the same as a Manhattan clam chowder. You want to spell words correctly. We've already talked about that, but some common misspelled words: portobello, vinaigrette. These are very common misspelled items. The term au jus, AU space JUS. Know when to use au jus and when to use just jus. Technically, the French word au jus means with juice. So if I said I'm going to serve a prime rib au jus, then basically what I've literally said is I'll serve a prime rib with juice. We tend to fudge that one a little bit in the United States because we're used to au jus being the term. Write carefully. For example, only the last description is the correct one on the list. See if you can spot a salmon fillet served with a baked potato ladled with our special sauce. Well, does that mean the baked potato is served with a special sauce on it? A salmon fillet ladled with our special sauce and baked potato. Why are you ladling a baked potato on top of your salmon fillet? Strange. A salmon fillet ladled with our special sauce and served with a baked potato. Now, this is much more accurate and much more conversationally correct. And then finally, review the description. Again, use the rule of three. Not only have you do it, have someone else do it, have someone else do it, and maybe throw a third or fourth or fifth or sixth person in there. Get someone unrelated to the situation too. Maybe have a customer look at it, one of your faithful customers that come in all the time. Nutrition and menu design. This is a hot topic right now. You can do things like identify things that are heart healthy on your menu. there are icons and words that you can use to describe this. Include nutritional alternatives in the same category as other items. So, for instance, entrees, maybe you throw a vegetarian item in there or two into that same category. Insert a general statement on the menu, such as, "We can prepare some items to meet your nutritional concerns. Please discuss your preferences with our server." Um, Terms such as fat-free, low-fat, lean beef, these all have specific technical meanings to them, and you want to be very careful about using those unless you are actually referring to that, which leads us into the next topic, menu accuracy. This is a very, very specific and very, very important topic because not only do you have to make sure your menu is well written, you have to make sure it's accurate. This goes to what we call truth in menu requirements, or truth in advertising, as it's sometimes referred to. And these are laws in a lot of locations that you have to adhere to, and you can be fined and or sued if you are not careful with this. Quantity. So a 2 egg omelet should contain 2 eggs. Duh. Quality. The term prime is used to indicate a steak that has been graded to a certain standard. You can't say prime on the menu and use choice or select beef. Now, prime rib is different because prime rib is actually the menu item name and has no reference to the quality grade of the beef. Price. If there's an extra charge, for example, an upcharge for a premium liquor, you want to make sure you have that on there as well. Brand names, things like Coca-Cola, Pepsi. If you're offering Coca-Cola products, you should offer Coca-Cola products. If you're offering Pepsi products, you should offer Coca-Cola products. I'm just saying. Product identification. Maple syrup and maple flavored syrup are not the same thing. Anyone who's ever had real maple syrup and then had Mrs. Buttersworth, I love Mrs. Buttersworth, don't get me wrong, but real maple syrup kicks Mrs. Butterworth's butt every day of the week. Preservation. Frozen green beans should not be called fresh. If they're frozen, they're frozen. They're not fresh. Food preparation. Made on site or made in-house. First off, there's no in-house. You can call it I'm sorry, there's no homemade. You can call it house-made, but you can't call it homemade. Homemade signifies that it was made at someone's home. And unless they have a health department permit, a license, a USDA inspection, blah, 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 you really can't do it at home. But house means in-house. And it's referred to within the operation. Verbal and visual presentation. If you have a photograph depicting 8 shrimp on a platter, then you should have 8 shrimp that's served. Any dietary and nutritional claims, like egg substitutes are available, then they have to be available. Unless you specifically tell them, "I apologize, we don't have that right now." But it should be a very, very limited situation and not the usual. And then, of course, preparation styles. The preparation method listed on the menu should be used. If it's grilled, then you should grill it and not produce it with grill marks and then steam it. Menu appearance and construction. So when we talk about menu appearance and construction, there's a lot that goes into actually physically constructing a menu. Do you do them on clipboards? Do you have them leather bound? Do you laminate them? All of these are styles that you have to consider. You want to consider that with your brand, how your brand image looks. Your brand image is going to dictate what kind of menu style, what kind of menu appearance and construction that you have. What size is the paper? Is it covered with padding? Is it, all of these things can be an issue. Do you use subheadings and headings? What color paper do you use? This is really meat and potato stuff here, because if you use the wrong color paper and the wrong lighting, now you're going to have customers squinting. And let's face it, us older people, we need all the help we can get. Can we please get big print? When you're designing your menus, please make them big print for us older people. Darker colors on light backgrounds or vice versa. These can be used to help emphasize selected items as well. You can do boxes within boxes and things like that. So there's lots of different ways of putting together a menu. Here's an example of your prime real estate within several different kinds of menus. This is where we want to put items that we either want to feature or our prime items or whatever we want to call them. Hail Caesar. Here they've got a disclaimer says it contains raw eggs. Menu item selling prices. So bear with me a little bit. We're going to go through 4 different methods of menu item pricing. This is a little complicated, but follow along with me in the book, and it will be a lot easier to follow this process through. So we are on page 19 of the book. We're going to get to the first method, which is food cost percentage method. This is the most common form of pricing methods that there is. It's the easiest to do. It's typically what we would do in the restaurant industry. Sometimes I call this bar napkin pricing. It's something I could do with just a quick scribble of a pen on a bar napkin or a quick calculation on my phone. It's very easy to do. It's sometimes referred to as the simple markup method. So first we have to determine our food cost. We determine our food cost by doing a food cost analysis, or basically a menu food costing. So we look at that item, we determine that it cost us $5.85 to produce. Now this is every bit of butter, every bit of salt and pepper on there, every bit of oil that we use, the main food items, whatever it is, it's all combined into this $5.85. We're going to turn around and we're going to sell it for $8.95. So it's a quick calculation where we divide $5.85 by $18.95. So we divide our food cost by our selling price. And that's going to give us our food cost percentage, 31%, roughly, rounded up. So now we know that that menu item is going to give us 31%. So for every 31 cents that for every dollar we bring in revenue, we're going to spend 31%. We're going to spend 31 cents in producing that item. That's what it means for us. Now, this is an important number to know because most restaurants want to operate on a specific food cost budget. And we know what our food cost budget is. Our overall food cost budget may be 30%. Well, in order to meet that 30%, you're going to have some items that are going to be higher in food cost. Some items are going to be lower in food cost. And you're going to have to sell a ton more of those lower food cost items in order to offset the higher food cost items. But that's a little complicated. We're going to get into that later. So again, if we want to figure out our selling price, now we know what our food cost is. We know what our food cost percent should be. And then all we do is divide. We take our food cost, $5.85. We divide it by our desired food cost of 31% or 0.31, and that gives us a recommended selling price of $18.90. That is our bare minimum price that we can set. We can go over that. We can sell it for $19. We can sell it for $20. We can't go below that if we want to meet our food cost percentage. So let's look at contribution margin now. Contribution margin. First, we have to define contribution margin. What is contribution margin? Contribution margin is the leftovers that contribute to the non-food cost and profit. So basically, it's everything but food cost. So this is, let's say, for instance, the easiest way to calculate this is to look at how much we receive in revenue for an item and how much we use to produce that item for food cost. So for instance, let's say we receive $1 for that item. Let's keep it simple. And for every dollar we receive, we pay out 30 cents for that item. So we take that and we subtract it out. We take $1 minus 30 cents, And that tells us that 70 cents of that item is contribution margin. It goes to pay everything else. That's our non-food costs like light, heat, gas, storage, people, bar towels, everything you can think of goes into that category. Plus our profit. So this is how much profit we're going to want to make in there as well. So knowing this contribution margin, we can determine a sell price. Now, follow along on page 21 for this because it does get a little bit confusing. So first thing we're going to do is calculate the average contribution margin per customer. We'll take our non-food cost plus profit, that's our contribution margin, plus our number of, we'll divide it by our number of customers, and this will give us our average customer contribution margin per customer. So if we already know what our contribution margin is, our non-food costs plus our profits that we want to make, and sometimes we dictate how much profit we want to make. We divide it by the number of customers that we expect to have during that time period, and that's going to be our average contribution margin per customer. So you can see here an example. Our non-food costs are $315,000 per month. Our profit is $31,000 per month. We add those two together and then divide it by 70,000 customers in 1 month. That tells us that our contribution margin on average should be $4.94 per customer. So we take our food cost of every single item we sell and we add $4.94 to it. So in this case, we have $5.20 for this food cost item. We're going to add $4.94 to it. That gives us a selling price of $10.14. Again, we add that contribution margin to every price, every food cost of every item. Can you see a problem with that? Some items only cost $1.50 to make. Some items cost $35 to make. So you really have to have 100% buy-in on this in order for it to work. And customers we know are finicky and they don't have 100% buy-in. They're going to buy what they want to buy. So it's a little bit tricky on that. Ratio pricing is similar in its aspect to contribution margin. First thing we do at the bottom of 21 is we determine what our contribution margin is, divide that by our food cost, and that's going to give us a ratio. So we take our $620,000 worth of non-food cost and our $48,000 worth of profit. We divide it by our food cost of $310,000. Now this is known quantities to us because we've done the calculations over time. This is something you have to do. You can't do this with a brand new operation. You have to have data to back this up. And that gives us a ratio of $2.15. Now we take our food cost and we multiply it times our ratio. And we do this for every item on our menu. If it costs us $3.78 to produce one item, we multiply it times our ratio of 215. That gives us a contribution margin of $8.13. Then we take our food cost and add it to our contribution margin to give us our menu price. So $3.78 plus $8.13 gives us our menu price of $11.91. Again, that relies on customer 100% buy-in. Now, contribution margin and ratio are really used for catering and prefix menus and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily meant for a la carte style restaurants. Prime cost pricing method. Again, this one is the most complicated of all of them, even though it's not technically complicated. There's just a lot of moving parts to it. First, let's talk about what is prime cost. Prime cost is food cost and labor cost combined together. That's it. How much it costs to make it, how much you use in labor to produce it. That's prime cost. And the reason why it's called prime cost is because those are your two most expensive costs that you're going to have, labor and food. So we add those two together. We take labor cost plus food cost, and then we divide it by the target labor cost percent and the target food cost percent, or the target prime percent. So we take our food cost in dollars, we divide it by we take our prime cost in dollars divided by our prime cost in percentage, and that's going to give us a sale price. So how do we get the prime cost in percentage? Well, we take our labor cost percent and our food cost percent and add them up. So in this case, we take 20% of labor cost and 33% of food cost, gives us a 53% prime cost. Think about that for a minute. 53% of all the money you bring in goes to pay for food and labor. Boom. Everything else is small nickels and dimes compared to those two. So we take that information. We take our food cost plus our labor cost, and we divide it by our target labor plus our target food cost. That's going to give us a selling price, in this case, of $11.15. So you can see how it works down here. We take our prime cost of $5.90 divided by 53% or 0.50 or 0.53, and that's going to give us $11.15. So again, it's a little bit more complicated. You have to know a lot of information on the backside of it. So the reason for that is we don't use the prime cost pricing method that much anymore. The one we use the majority of is the food cost percentage method because it's simple, it's easily understandable. The only ones you're going to use the other ones in are operations where it's a lot more complicated, a lot more moving parts are involved in that. So here's an example of some manager's math. You can go into the textbook this is located and work this problem. It will give you a little bit of good of understanding, a little bit better understanding in that. So what is the selling price of sirloin steak resulted from the formulas calculation? In this case, it's $17.11. What is the selling price for baked chicken resulting from the formulas calculation? Is $14.22. What is the selling price for lake trout? It's $17.44. And if you were to the manager, would you adjust any of these prices up or down prior to printing them on the menu, and why? First, I would never adjust them down, because if you adjust them down, then now you're not getting your correct percentages for your target. You can adjust them up. Yes, you're not going to get the same percentage, but it's going to be better for you. But you can't adjust them too far up because the customer may not want to purchase them at that price. You may price yourself out of the market. Ooh, okay, here's a category for you guys. We're going to talk about menu engineering. Now, the textbook has a spreadsheet on there, but I'm actually going to show you a slightly different version of that. This is actually my spreadsheet that I created that I will upload and you can have to take with you in perpetuity. Good luck. I would download it. It's a great resource to have. This Excel program actually has other things. It has menu engineering for appetizers, one for entree, one for desserts. You have a prime cost calculator, you have a recipe cost card, and a menu item cost calculator, all involved in that one Excel spreadsheet workbook. So you can utilize those and take them with you in perpetuity. My gift to you. So let's take a look at this. What we're doing is we want to evaluate two things. We want to evaluate whether it's popular and whether it's profitable. So how do we evaluate these? First, let's talk about, is it popular? So if you look here, you can see that the menu items, there we go, that's a little bit easier to see. The menu items are, all right. So I've got 5 menu items on here. I've got cheese sticks, ravioli, broccoli bites, fried mushrooms, and duck wontons. And next to them, I've got the number sold. This is called the menu mix. We can do this by going into our point of sale system and running a report. Otherwise, we're going to have to track it manually. No one wants to have to do that. Ain't nobody got time for all that. So we're going to use a POS system to be able to track this. Now, in 1 month, I sold 500 orders of cheese sticks, 100 orders of ravioli, 1,200 orders of broccoli bites, 400 orders of fried mushrooms, and then 75 orders of duck wontons. Fair enough, right? That's going to give me a total of 2,275 total items sold to represent 100%. Okay. So looking at this, this will tell us what's popular. Now, broccoli bites are 53% of all the appetizers that I sell. It is obviously popular. The cheese sticks, 22%, also obviously popular. The fried mushrooms, they're 18%. It's popular, but not as popular. And the other two, well, you know, not so much. So that is how we determine the popularity index of it. That's going to tell us whether or not we have a high or a low popularity. Here I can actually look at this and I can see that it is popular for the cheese sticks. It's very popular for the, I don't remember what that was. It was low popularity. These two are high and this one is low. I'll zoom out. We'll see the whole thing in just a minute. Now, the next thing we need two more pieces of information. We need the item's food cost and we need the item's selling price. So we got to, where do we get this information? Well, first we're going to have to know what the food cost is. And we do that by creating a food cost sheet. We literally calculate out the food cost of that item. Let's say, for instance, cheese sticks cost me $5 to produce, and I sell them for $12. The item's profit or contribution margin is $7. That's how much we have made from that item. Every time we sell a cheese stick, we make $7. Now, that doesn't mean $7 goes in our pocket. That's our contribution margin. But that is a moderate amount of money. Interesting. The next three items are all $9. We're making $9 on every one of those items we sell. And then the last option, the wontons, we're making $7. Now, taking it in a vacuum, you would think that the $9 in profit are great for everything, right? Not always the case. We have to look at the whole thing. Now, I basically pulled 4 pieces of information. That's all I needed. I need the item name, I need how many they're sold, I need their food cost, and I need their item selling price, which we get off the menu. Those 4 pieces of information are going to give me a wealth of information that I can make decisions with. Now, the way it looks on here is we're going to categorize it now. Profitability for cheese sticks, comparatively, it's low. It's under the average of $8.49, which you can see at the bottom of the sheet. That's what it calculated to, $8.49. There's a lot of automatic calculations go in there. But it's under that number, so we consider it low. The ravioli is $9. It's above that number, we consider it high. So we would mark it as low and high, respectively. Now, the popularity of the cheese sticks is high. So if it's low profit, high popularity, we call this category a plow horse. We'll get into that in just a second, what each one describes. The ravioli, we're going to come back to that. The broccoli bites, we sell a ton of broccoli bites. It's high popularity. We get $9 for every one that we sell. It costs us $3 and we sell it for $12. It's going to be high in profitability. So we call this a star. When you got high popularity, high profitability, it's a star. These are items on your menu that are absolute must-haves. And then the other category down at the bottom is just the opposite of that. It's low popularity, low profitability. We call that a dog. The one that's the weirdest of all of them, though, is the puzzle. It's high profitability. It's good for our bottom line, but we just don't sell that many of them. People just don't seem to like it. And why? We don't know. We just don't know. So we call it a puzzle. So this is how menu engineering works. I would do one of these for appetizers. I would do one for entrees. I would do one for desserts. I do one for beverages. I do one, you can do this by category for anything. You can do it by time of day even, and determine what are your main drivers for your menu. It's very quick. You don't need a lot of information. I'm giving you the spreadsheet. I highly recommend downloading this. Keep it, and it'll be good for you in the future. The only other thing you need to know is down here at the bottom left, where it says percent of average. In this case, I've got 70%. Typically, I don't use 50%. I don't want average to be 50%. I want my average to be better than 50%. So I use 70%. That's kind of a benchmark for me. 60% or 80% or 75%. It's all up to what you want it to be on that particular case. So that's the menu engineering in a nutshell. Um, it is a moderately overwhelming looking spreadsheet, but it's deceptively simple. Deceptively simple in that. But what do these categories mean? Let's take a look at these categories. The star is an item that is high menu mix percentage and high contribution margin. We know that, right? So these are things that, what do we do with it? What do we do with this information? Well, with stars, we do nothing. Don't touch it. Don't change it. Don't look at it. Make sure it's correct. Make sure it's consistent. Make sure it's priced the same, and leave it alone. It's doing its thing. You maybe want to use it as suggestive selling. I mean, if you're running a low food cost, or if you're running a high food cost on some things, maybe you suggestively sell these stars to bring down your food cost. Plow horses, these are the things that drive your menus. Steaks are a great example of this. So steaks are moderately low in profitability. We don't get a lot of money for them because they're expensive. Meat's expensive. But we are really popular. We love our steaks. So we're going to sell them. These are things, as you can imagine, what does a plow horse do? It pulls a plow. It pulls things forward. It drives your menu forward. So what can you do in this case? The more you sell of these, the less it affects your bottom line. The more you sell of them, the less expensive they become for you. This is called economies of scale. So the more I can sell of an item, the less I have to put into that item overall as an aggregate. So it's better for me to sell more of them. So remember I talked about earlier the prime real estate on the menu. Maybe you put this in your prime real estate to push this. Or you go the opposite. Maybe maybe you want to tweak your sell price a little bit. Now be careful about tweaking your selling price. Customers don't like change, and they specifically don't like change in the price that they're going to pay. But if it's necessary, it's necessary. If the portions are too large, you can reduce them slightly to decrease your food costs and increase your contribution margin. Again, be careful of that. People have memories. They order the same thing over and over and over, so they will notice if that is the case. If observation of the menu design indicates that they're present in the very high profile positions of the menu, they can be moved to a less obvious spot. Maybe they're driving the menu too hard and you want to move them out of that specific location. You can combine them with other menu items and make a much lower food cost. So maybe you want to pair them up in a combination, I don't know, like a combo meal or something like that. A low cost item such as French fries with a high cost item such as a hamburger. And that's going to drive down that particular average. If the item requires a lot of labor to produce, it could be removed from the menu altogether, or you can find labor saving items in there. Maybe you're making your own mayonnaise from scratch. Stop making your own mayonnaise from scratch. It's great to do if you're in a fancy, fine French restaurant. Otherwise, buy that stuff. You're going to get a better quality and it's going to be consistent. And the last one of these categories, and one of my personal favorites because it's so hard to define, it's so hard to figure out how to overwhelm this. It's not the last category, but it is one of the categories that's really hard to define, is the puzzle. The reason why it's called a puzzle is we just don't know what to do with it. It's great for our bottom line. Every time we sell one, it's high contribution margin. We get lots of profit from it. but customers just don't seem to like it. We don't know why. Is it in a bad spot on the menu? Is it a bad item? These are things that you have to ask yourself. Maybe you rename it. Maybe it's got a poor name that's associated with it. The Hail Caesar salad. To be quite honest with you, I like plays on word, but I don't know if I'd use that. Dogs. Now, I'm sure there are dog lovers and there are dog ambivalents out there, but for the purpose of our discussion, what do you do with a dog that is no longer able to perform? Well, you take it out and you make it comfortable and give it its last day. And that's what you have to do sometimes with these items. Sometimes we just have to cull an item off a menu. If it's not performing, we remove it. You could try raising the selling price and reducing the cost of ingredients to increase its profitability. But again, if it's not selling, raising the price is really not going to help you that much. You could replace it with an alternative menu item. And this is what I do a lot of the times. So I might have a pasta on the menu that is made with a pre-made garlic parsley sauce. It's terrible sauce, by the way. This is an actual situation. It was a terrible sauce. It was always broken. It was made with dried parsley. It was horrible. Why they even had it on the menu, I don't know. So I would run as a special a fresh pesto pasta, and I would offer this as an opportunity to be able to try something different, but have a similar flavor. What happened was the fresh pasta became a huge seller. The other item never really moved. I may sold 1 or 2 a day of those. But the fresh pasta, I would sell 20, 30, 40, 50 a day of those. So what happened was I immediately said, you know what? We're going to drop this dog over here and we're going to replace it with this plow horse or this star. And it made perfect sense. So that's an example of what you can do with menu engineering. Menu engineering is a very powerful tool that can help you determine what is profitable, what is popular in your restaurant, and it will give you a great understanding. So I hope this has been a useful tool for you guys. This is our first introduction. I hope this kind of lecture has helped for you guys. I'm trying to get access to the PowerPoint, the raw PowerPoint, so you can have them. But as you can see, the PowerPoints are not really that useful. They're just outlines. The book is going to be much more of use to you. So we hope to see you guys down the road, and let me know if you have any questions. You can email me, you can call me. My numbers and contact are in the syllabus, and we will see you on the next one.